Hello, everybody. Welcome back to the Forbidden Land podcast. This episode is another episode in our Georgia election series. On Tuesday, the Georgia primary results came in for the 2026 midterms. On the ballot, they were choosing the people of Georgia, which includes me, were choosing who their next senator will be on the general ballot, who their next governor candidate will be, who their next lieutenant governor candidate will be, amongst many other like locals and various other seats. There were also Georgia Supreme Court elections. The results of that election were super disappointing because the incumbents won, and those elections were actually final. And I don't think people realized that they were not voting in their own interest. We could have changed the Georgia Supreme Court for the better, and I think people just didn't know how to process that many candidates on a ballot. And in my opinion, the state Supreme Court election should have probably been separate. But what do I know? I'm just trying to make voting easier to understand. So there were some interesting results on Tuesday. John Ossoff won. I know it was a close race between John and no one else. It was a very close race. He just barely squeaked out 100% of the vote. How crazy is that? He got over 1 million votes, and you know what? Good on him for winning that tough fight. He got 1,040,000 votes. Holy shit. In the Republican Senate race, it came down to Mike Collins and Derek Dooley. Now, this election will go on to a runoff in June, and the race was a lot closer than you'd think. Mike Collins got 40% of the vote. Derek Dooley got 30%. And then Earl Carter, Buddy Carter, got 25% of the vote, with the other, random no-name candidates coming like in dead last. But, if you don't understand how Georgia election law works, if you're watching this outside of Georgia, or if you just don't know how it works, in Georgia, if a candidate does not receive at least 50% or more of the vote, it goes to a runoff, and the top two candidates then face each other. This is a really outdated, old, racist law. It was designed to prevent party splitting amongst conservatives. It would be something like a black candidate running for an office, and then 2 or 3 like white conservative candidates, and the vote would split between all of them, and the black candidate would get the majority of the vote. Essentially, they created runoff laws to prevent that from happening. That way, when it goes to the new election, all of the racist conservatives would pool their votes into the one candidate. And that's pretty much how they did it. To be able to basically win elections because they were so indecisive. Texas has a similar system. I believe it works the same way. I haven't even opened this yet. I believe their system actually works the exact same way. So I could be wrong about some of the details, but yeah, Texas does indeed have a runoff system. I don't know what other southern states do. I believe not that many. States in general have it. Shit's so good. Yum. But there's something really interesting about what will happen here. Now, Mike Collins, I kind of assumed would just be the main candidate. I did not expect Derek Dooley to do so well. I thought Buddy Carter and Mike Collins would be neck and neck, and that's who the runoff would be between. And Derek Dooley, who is backed by Brian Kemp, the current governor, didn't do too bad. And if you look at the map, I mean, all of these counties down here are buddies. And I believe it's because Buddy Carter actually represents one of the counties down here. I believe, if I'm not mistaken, this is the county that he represents, where Savannah is. And he took the entire southeast counties, and he took one of the counties up here. But yeah, I mean, really bizarre how this map is split up. Derek Dooley did really well in like the Atlanta metro and southwest Georgia a little bit. Took a few counties there, not by a lot. So I'm wondering what will happen in the runoff. Where will Buddy Carter's votes go? If I'm gonna be honest, most of them will go to Mike Collins. I think we already know who's winning this runoff, and it's gonna be Mike Collins. Mike Collins is the closest. Oh my God, is the closest ideologically to not Derek Dooley. Buddy Carter. They both, Mike Collins and Buddy Carter, both share a lot of ideology, like when it comes to the 2020 election, when it comes to Trump claiming that he actually won that election. They both subscribe to that idea. They both have very similar views on legislation. I think people in Georgia are sick of Brian Kemp. And by people, I mean the Republicans, because Brian Kemp doesn't stay 100% consistent with Trump. It's like the Thomas Massie situation, where he broke away from Trump in very key moments, and MAGA remembered that. And anybody that he backs will get some support from the party, but will overall suffer in the long run, because that MAGA views Kemp as being like a traitor. Remember that it's Kemp's Secretary of State that refused to overturn the election in Georgia. And, Kemp backed his Secretary of State. And although Kemp chose, the current lieutenant governor, who's like Burt Jones, who's like a far right MAGA loyalist, who also believes that the 2020 election was stolen. Even though he chose that guy for his lieutenant governor, pick in 2022, I don't think people forgive Brian Kemp for what he did. I mean, the attitude is very different now. Like 4 years ago, when David Perdue was running against Kemp, he ran on the whole, I'm a MAGA loyalist, I'm MAGA all the way. But that midterm was particularly harsh for MAGA. Republicans kind of viewed MAGA as like a dying cancer, and something to be forgotten. It's why Herschel Walker, I mean, really, it's not the main reason why Herschel Walker lost so bad, but it's one of the reasons why Herschel Walker nuked the fucking polls when the election came around. It's one of the reasons why David Perdue lost the primary to Brian Kemp. Republicans at that time 4 years ago were absolutely sick of MAGA. 4 years later, MAGA's back in power, and although generally speaking MAGA has lost a lot of popularity, that they are maybe 20% of the total electorate in this country, only a small chunk of Republicans are even MAGA at this point. They still seem to be dominating in local political elections. I would argue that Derek Dooley will come close, but will not win against Mike Collins. That's my prediction. I think people who voted for Buddy Carter might be a little off-put by Mike Collins, kind of casual, horrible attitude towards politics. Mike Collins is a little corrupt. He's got he's got a lot of baggage with him. A lot of reports have been coming out about him that make him look bad. He had a disastrous response to the Appalachia High School shooting that happened in his district, by the way. He's just associated with the worst of the Republicans. He's heavily associated with Marjorie Taylor Greene, who has kind of fallen out of favor in the MAGA movement. I can see why they would have voted for Buddy, but I think on an ideological level, they're gonna, at the end of the day, side with not Carter. They're gonna side with Collins. I think Derek Dooley is just some random football coach that doesn't have any strict political stances. That's the problem, is that he doesn't, like, I went on his campaign website, I've watched a few of his ads, I've read his Wikipedia page, I've read some of the sources for his Wikipedia page directly. This dude does not have solid ideology. I mean, he'll just be a run-of-the-mill Republican, boring, but if the Republicans want an exciting MAGA candidate, they're probably going to pick Mike Collins. Mr. $9 fucking Subway sandwich from APAC. Fucking ridiculous, dude. That's what I think is going to happen. I think Buddy Carter's votes are going to go to Mike Collins. Next up, so Keisha Lance Bottoms, surprise, surprise, won the primary. And after she won the primary, I saw a lot of negative feedback to that. Someone pointed out that she is indeed the creator of Cop City, and said that apparently Lance Bottoms claimed that politics stressed her out and she quit, being the mayor and all that. I think she is a run-of-the-mill centrist liberal Democrat. I don't think, she's good for our, I don't think she's good for this election. She's kind of freaking me out on this one. Do I think Lance Bottoms has a chance of becoming the governor? I don't know. I think enough people don't like her that it will hurt her chances in the general. Now, she doesn't have to go to a runoff. She got 56% of the vote. But Jason Estevez got 18%. He got 200,000 votes. Me, I'm one of them. I voted for him in the primary. That's right. Folks, I thought I had my stickers still on the desk, but I don't. Folks, I voted for him. I'll be real. I like him personally. I like a progressive, a progressive candidate who actually speaks about issues in a way that makes sense. Keisha Lance Bottoms is simply advancing her political career. She was the mayor of the largest city in the South, Atlanta. She worked in the Biden administration in the White House. And then she worked high up in the DNC. Of course, she's going to tick off being the first Democrat governor of Georgia in decades. Especially, she'll be historic. She'll be the first black woman to govern, I think, any state in the United States, if I remember correctly. But will she be able to hold up against the Republicans in this race? And this is the other issue, is that Keisha Lance Bottoms will do nothing as governor. She's going to be in a Republican-controlled legislature. And do I think she'll delay Republican advancement? Yes. But I don't think she's going to stand up to the Republicans in the way that liberals hope she will. In the Republican race, it is going to a runoff, and it's really close. Really close. Brad Raffensperger ate shit. This guy was probably going to be the close runner-up until Rick Jackson entered the race, and because of that, he ate shit. He got 15% of the vote, did poorly, whatever. He's the guy that stood up to Trump over the phone. That's what he's known for. But Burt Jones got 38%, while Rick Jackson got 32%. And the race is really close. Right now it's within 55,000 votes of each other. I don't know how to feel about this one. I think the people that voted for Chris Carr, who I believe is the current Attorney General, the people who voted for Brad Raffensperger, a lot of them might go for Rick Jackson because he's an outsider, billionaire businessman. He's similar to, I think he's a billionaire. He's similar to, I think he's rich, similar to Trump in that regard. But politics-wise, Burt Jones is way closer to Trump. Burt Jones subscribes to the crazy MAGA ideology of the 2020 election was fake, and they're sending immigrants over the border to eat your babies and kill your children and whatever the fuck he thinks. So I don't know. I feel like a sizable chunk of the third and fourth place candidates, their votes might go to Rick Jackson while the rest go to Burt. Will it be enough to push Rick Jackson over the finish line? And this is the real scary part, is that Burt Jones I could see losing to Lance Bottoms. Burt Jones is kind of a Herschel Walker figure. All you would need is just to give him like CTE. All you would need to give Burt Jones like a perfect impression of Herschel Walker is to give him brain damage. And he's like a carbon copy of Herschel Walker. He's one, the Chinese are sending their bad air and taking our good air comment away from being Herschel Walker. He's one, I chased a guy down and flashed an FBI badge story away from that. But I think if he went up against Lance Bottoms, it would be a fairly close race. I think if Rick Jackson's the candidate, I don't know. It might not go too well for the Democrats in that regard. And you might think like, what about John Ossoff? He's popular. If he wins re-election, there's a high chance. No. If you remember 4 years ago, Raphael Warnock was running for re-election because he was elected 2 years prior in a special election and beat Kelly Loeffler. In 2022, he was running for re-election to start a full term. And he was up against Herschel Walker. Herschel Walker was so unpopular and so awful that he beat Walker and the ticket split, and Brian Kemp beat Stacey Abrams. And it was not by a small margin either. It was by like 200,000 votes in both directions. I mean, it was heavy. And it really shows how much people didn't like Stacey Abrams and really how much people didn't like Herschel Walker. So I've seen split tickets before. John Ossoff could win his election against either Mike Collins or Derek Dooley. If it's Derek Dooley, I feel like John Ossoff has that pretty down. If it's Mike Collins, it'll definitely be closer. But Keisha Lance Bottoms needs to be very careful if Rick Jackson becomes the candidate, because he's seen as an outsider. He's seen as a good businessman who will bring business back to Georgia as if it's leaving. He's seen as like a sensible, reasonable conservative. And that plays really well with a lot of Republicans here. Georgia isn't as right-wing as the surrounding southern states. Florida's like retirement home, old people style right-wing. They're on borrowed time. South Carolina is fairly right-wing because it's just so damn rural. Tennessee has just deep right-wing roots in it. Alabama, do I even need to fucking say why Alabama is conservative? And Mississippi's the same way. But Georgia, because of its major business hub, and my whole desk's moving, its major business hub, Atlanta exists. We have the largest airport in the country. We have all this infrastructure. Because we're such a well-developed state, we end up having a lot of Democratic wins all over the place. I mean, even this past election, there were Democratic wins all over the state in places you wouldn't expect. So, you know, there's a lot of like somewhat normally conservative Republicans here compared to, you know, other places in the South where there's like full MAGA conservative Republicans. I I want to say Burt Jones will more than likely be the candidate, but Rick Jackson I fully expect to come really close, if not beat him in this runoff. Um that's what I think about the Burt Jones and Jackson runoff right now. Also, there's like a county in here that is tied between them. Habersham at 99% reporting. I don't know if that's been updated, but Jackson and Jones are tied at 2640 votes in that county. That's kind of crazy. I wanted to show this map real quick. I almost forgot to show it. How the Fulton County district is broken up in the Democratic primary with the results. And this is like the county that encompasses Atlanta. I want you to see how they voted. Now, here's the color coding. You see, you know, yeah, like forest green is Keisha Lance Bottoms, and the kind of like maroonish red is Jason Estevez. Look at how much in the main part of Atlanta voted for Jason. Now, remember, before redistricting, Jason Estevez used to represent District 6, which was this area. It was Atlanta. So they remember him as being his state, you know, him representing them in the state legislature. And they like him so much, they liked him more than the former mayor, Keisha Lance Bottoms. Now, I will say, if you know anything about Atlanta, almost every mayor of Atlanta is, like in recent history, is unliked. And it's because they get in office and then they suck. So the last race I want to talk about is the Georgia Lieutenant Governor's race. And that one is a full runoff. That race is a full runoff. We don't know who the final candidates are on either side. Although something unexpected happened. When I was looking at the candidates for the Democratic ticket, I only saw Josh McLaurin's name, and he was the only one that was polling. And a surprise candidate for me popped in, and they're like neck and neck in the polls. So Josh McLaurin was the guy I voted for. He's endorsed by Rua Roman, who is a personal favorite of mine. She's a Palestinian Georgia representative in the state legislature, and she's running for Georgia State Senate. And she endorsed him after she dropped out of the governor's race. And so that's who I voted for. But another candidate, Nabila Parks, she came just 20,000 votes shy of Josh McLaurin. Now, she's an interesting one. As candidates, they both seem to be about the same. She wants to expand Medicaid like he does. She has a lot more like defined policy positions. She wants to extend early voting access. She introduced legislation that would let voters permanently opt into mail-in ballots. She wants to create pro-LGBTQ plus legislation. She's against discrimination in housing and employment, which, who's for that? Let's see. She co-sponsored the Reproductive Freedom Act, which would overturn the heartbeat bill and essentially protect the right to an abortion. She wants at least 12 weeks of paid parental leave for everyone. I would say that's pretty good, and I'm glad that she specifies that it's parental leave for everyone. I feel like a lot of people forget that the dad is in that equation. A lot of people forget that the mom's even in that equation. But I'm glad that she's saying this for both parents, because it is important to have both parents there during the first stages of a child's life, and I feel like a lot of dads get kind of left out of that. So I'm actually pretty chill with that. I'm glad she included that in that message. She wants to expand Medicaid to cover screenings for depression, anxiety, and maternal mental health. Support for mothers for 1 year following the end of their pregnancy. That's pretty awesome. You don't see a lot of candidates advocating for stuff like that. I believe she's the first person in the Georgia legislature to give birth while in office. So, it kind of goes pretty hand in hand with her policy positions on all of this. It makes sense. She wants to expand access to OBGYNs. I believe she said she wants an OBGYN in like every hospital or something like that, or every county. I forget how she worded it, but essentially just like so also rural areas will get access to OBGYNs as well. Let's see. She introduced legislation that ensured free breakfast and free school lunches, state health care for teachers, and she's anti-culture war in schools. Between the two of them, I like them both. I think Josh will probably end up winning, but I could see myself voting for Parks. I could see myself voting for her. She seems like a decent candidate, with a lot more sound policy positions. So I think I think there's a real chance I would vote for her in a runoff, which I'll have the chance to do so on June 16th. On the Republican ticket, sorry, but the names here are so funny. John F. Kennedy got 27% of the vote, and Greg Dolezal got 23% of the vote. Now, in close third is Blake Tillery, who, if you remember, Blake Tillery is the guy who ran over a cyclist and killed him, like the year before he got into office. So I'm really glad that guy tanked. It seemed like there was a really real chance of him winning there for a minute, and I'm glad he's out, because that was a little scary. Steve Gooch got booted as well, with 11% of the vote, and all the other candidates got knocked out as well. David Clark came in fourth. Boring. All these candidates are just kind of cookie cutter copies of each other. But yeah, John F. Kennedy and Greg Dolezal, that's who it's coming down to, and it's pretty close. It seems that a lot of districts went to Tillery. Not districts, a lot of counties went to Tillery. John F. Kennedy did get a large swath of the vote, I will say that. Kennedy did take all of these deep red-colored counties. While, like Gooch took some. Dolezal dominated a lot of the north of Metro Atlanta area, as well as the Savannah area as well. But Tillery took a lot of counties. Like a lot. But it makes you like really see that Kennedy won where it mattered. He won in counties with high population centers, so he ended up squeaking out a lot more votes in those, counties than Tillery could. And yeah, that's how this primary turned out for the Republicans on the lieutenant governor's race. I'm really glad Tillery's out of there. If we've got to have a Republican lieutenant governor, I'd rather it not be Tillery. Sorry, but dude's fucking gross. They all are, but he's particularly pretty gross. And that's the race. Who do I think will take the win on the runoff for that, by the way? John F. Kennedy. I'm pretty solid on that one. I don't think Dolezal will take it. I think Dolezal gained a lot of numbers in counties that didn't like Blake Tillery and voted for Kennedy overwhelmingly. And I think Dolezal just picked up votes by osmosis, and it was enough to kick Blake Tillery out of the race. But I don't think it'll come down to a close race with those two. I think it'll be more than likely John F. Kennedy winning. So those are my predictions, my thoughts. I will be making a episode later after the primary runoffs. And we'll do like a more detailed kind of, because this was just going over the results, who I think will win in the general, like early predictions. We'll do a primary runoff results episode, so we can kind of compare all the candidates and make actual predictions based on those poll numbers and seeing voter turnout and whatnot. Obviously, it's the primary runoff. I mean, how many people are you going to get to come out for that? But I think that'll be a good video to have to kind of make predictions about the general. And then I'm going to make one about ballot initiatives, and maybe I'll make one about the Attorney General's race. Because, that's the dude that's going to be charging people and enforcing laws. So, I mean, shoot, you've seen over the last year just how important the federal Attorney General is. So, maybe it's worth talking about. And then, ballot initiatives, what ballot measures are going to be passed. There were some on the primary ballot, on the Democratic primary ballot, where it was like, do you support not taxing billionaires? Like that. The Democratic Party had some spicy questions on there, but I'm talking about like Homestead Act or Homestead exemption votes and tax credits and all that, fun stuff. Should a certain type of judge be a nonpartisan elected official, stuff like that. Probate judges specifically. So if you want to support this podcast, you can go to patreon.com/forbiddenlandpod. If you'd like to listen to this audio only, you can go to Apple Podcasts, or you can go to YouTube Music or your Samsung smart refrigerator. And I'll be back on Friday with the main episode 172. It's going to be a fun one. We're talking about the White House. We're talking about the National Security Director or National Intelligence Director. We're talking about the slush fund. It's a big week, so I'll be talking about that. And thanks for watching. Thanks for listening. And peace.